So talk to me about your journey with that, having a healthy outlook on your playing.
I still don't think I have a healthy outlook, but
Welcome to episode 48 of the Bass Shed podcast. My name is Ryan Roberts. On the episode is Lance Morrison. Lance Morrison is a Los Angeles-based touring and session bass player. Lance has worked with Rod Stewart, Alanis Morrissette, Don Henley, Simple Minds, so many more. He is also a composer. We didn't really get to talk about his composition too much because we got into some other things that were really fascinating to me. We talk about the psychology of music as it relates to birth order, which both of those things are really interesting to me. And it was really fun to explore with Lance too and hear his take on those things. D. Lakin Basses. Founder of Lakeland Basses, Dan Lakin, has a new company, D. Lakin Basses. I am honored to be a part of the D. Lakin family and have worked with him and his design team to create a bass that's in production and will be out within the next couple months. He just emailed me yesterday. I think that it's off for painting. So I'm pretty excited about that. You can hear more from Dan on episode 47 of the podcast and also episode 20 of the podcast. On episode 20, he talks more about his history with Lakeland Basses and how that kind of ended for him and things that started D. Lakin. And on episode 47, you can hear more about what he's up to right now. That being said, Dan is working with several amp companies, and he has an amp shop and doing distribution for. You can go check those out at dlakenbasses.com. Dan is also doing a bass giveaway, and the first place of the giveaway, of the raffle, if you will, is the bass of your dreams. You can design your custom bass with Dan Lakin and get your custom D. Lakin bass. Go to dlakenbasses.com for more information. And then get working with Dan. He's one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite people, and creates fantastic instruments. So check him out. www.dlakenbasses.com. Everything that you need for the double bass can be found at lemurmusic.com. Bows, rosins, practice materials, etudes, instructional videos. Everything you need for the double bass can be found at lemurmusic.com. Stop by their website, shoot them an email, say hello. I'm proud and honored to have been starting this partnership with them. I've been a customer of theirs for years, and I will be announcing more about that in the next coming episodes. But in the meantime, stop by lemurmusic.com. As I mentioned, my guest is Lance Morrison, who played on Jagged Little Pill by Alanis Morrissette. This is really cool for me because I had just started playing the bass the year that album cleaned up at the Grammys. So it was great for me personally to connect with him and talk about that album again this many years later. That being said, Lance and I really kind of dive into the topic of talking about childhood development and how that impacts musicianship. And it was really cool to go down that rabbit hole with him to investigate these ideas of how that plays out in his personal life and, how it's played out in mine a little bit and how each of those things shape us, the personal journey of music, and kind of connecting it all to our past and who we were, blah, blah, blah. How we were recognized and seen as children and all that stuff. We go there. It definitely goes there. And that was a lot of fun. That was just as fun for me as talking about all the fantastic things he's done in his career. And so here's my talk with bassist Lance Morrison. Cool, man. How was your weekend?
Let's see. It was fine. I got my my second COVID dose on Friday.
Okay.
And Friday I was fine. But then Saturday I woke up and I took like 3 or 4 naps and I was just tired all day. I mean, I didn't feel bad, I was just wiped.
Did you have COVID?
No.
I heard that if you had it, like the first one will knock you out kind of. Like you're a little bit incapacitated for a few days. And then you get the second one, but after that you're bulletproof. Like after you've had it and got the vaccine.
Oh, yeah, that would be cool.
I mean makes sense, just antibody-wise.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're good to go at that point. Yeah, most people, I guess, have some sort of, reaction to the second dose, and mine was fairly mild. And then other than that, yeah. So I didn't do much. I did a like a remote bass session yesterday.
Sweet.
That I wanted to do on Saturday, but I just couldn't. I just literally was on the couch. So.
All right.
So
who is the artist? Like a local thing or a record label thing?
No, it was like a kind of a local thing, an independent artist. So it was fun.
Nice.
You never know how that goes. I mean, I've worked with them before, so you kind of know what you can deliver and what they like and stuff like that. So I didn't get any feedback other than that they liked it, so that's cool.
Great. Dude, how long have you been in LA?
Since, was it September of 88?
September of 88. And then you're from Virginia.
Right, yeah. Yeah, moved out.
What city in Virginia?
Northern Virginia. Springfield was where I basically kind of went to high school, junior high.
Okay.
And then I went to college, spent 4 years in college, and moved to Richmond, Virginia with Keith Howland. He's now the guitar player in Chicago. And
sweet.
And we moved out together. We enrolled in MI and spent our first year in LA at the Musicians Institute.
Yeah.
Which was fun.
How was that back then? I feel like that was kind of the heyday of MI. Not throwing shade now, but it seems like, back then it was doing bigger things.
Yeah, and also they had just opened like a brand new building, so it was kind of going strong. It was kind of on the upswing or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was fun. And I mean, the instructors there it was crazy. Like Jeff Berlin and Tim Bogert and
sweet.
Yeah. I mean, it was nuts. The people that were there, faculty. So it was great.
How long had you been playing bass at that point?
Let's see. About 10 years, I guess.
Oh, okay. You were kind of in it already.
Yeah. I mean, I started when I was 13. I wanted to play drums, but a friend of mine had bought a guitar, and he said you should play bass instead of drums. I'm like, okay. So I was like, I guess so.
Seems like that seems like the common story. Just like, all right, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah, right.
I think bass players are always just so passive about it. Like, all right, fine.
Yeah, exactly. So I did that, and dude, I was clueless when I started. I mean, first of all, like I remember my friend. This would have been like 8th grade, I guess. My friend, bought a guitar. He's like, dude, you should come over after school and see my guitar. I'm like, oh yeah, and I was picturing like this double neck, crazy guitar or something like that, and I go there and it's like this, this cheap knockoff or whatever. It looked really cheap.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
yeah,
that's
Honda.
a guitar? Yeah, exactly. I think it was a K.
Yeah, okay.
It was like, oh, whatever. And so like I picked up the guitar and I thought that the frets, that's where you put your finger. That's what the frets were for, is to, show you where you put your finger. I mean, that's how much I knew,
Yeah.
So, but no, we had a lot of fun, just goof around, just writing stupid songs and stuff like that. And, I mean, I didn't really take anything serious, like as far as playing music for a couple of years. I mean, it was just like entertaining myself and my friends,
Okay.
like just getting together and writing stupid songs and recording them on those little portable cassette decks. And I mean, it still actually cracks me up. My friend kept all of the cassettes and stuff like that. So, I've got all of it. And dude, oh my God, it's so funny.
Nice.
We were just fearless and stupid and dumb. And
Sure.
I mean, we knew we were, it wasn't like we thought we were great or anything like that. It was
Right.
Dude, it was Tenacious D before Tenacious D, but without the talent and musicality,
Yeah, right.
But it was that vibe.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So So then I bought a bass, and I think my parents. When I say I bought a bass, my parents bought it for me. It was actually it was a Bradley Rickenbacker copy.
Okay.
And at that time, like my guys on bass, my two favorite bands were Rush and Yes. So
Okay.
now that I'm being a bass player, it's like, okay, so I guess Chris Squire and Geddy Lee are the guys that I need to be like,
Yeah.
And at the music store, I saw this bass, and it looked like the bass that those guys played. I'm like, that must be the one. I don't.
Yeah, that's it.
I don't even think I knew that the difference between a Rickenbacker and a Bradley or anything like that. So so again, speaking of like not knowing anything, so I buy the bass, and my friend and I, the guy with the guitar, his name is Jeff Rains. Shout out to Jeff.
Yeah.
And we go back to my house to like, let's play the bass guitar. And we get back there and to my house, and we're in my bedroom, and it's like, okay, how do you think you tune this thing? And I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, I think your fattest string, that's an E, right?
Yeah.
That's probably what my thinnest string is, right? That makes sense. Like those are the same.
Right. Sure.
So I'm trying to tune the G string up to an E. It's like bring, snap, like the string breaks,
Oh man.
And I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
And end up having to walk back to the music store and buying a G string and then restringing it. I mean, I thought I had broken it beyond all repair when the string snapped. I'm like, oh God, what do you do now?
So is that when you found out that it was a G? When you told them like, hey, I need the smallest string on a bass, and they're
Dude,
like,
you know
G,
what?
and you're like, no, I think it's an E. No, it's a G. No, I'm
I'm
pretty sure
guessing
it's an E.
That's probably right. I don't even remember, but yeah, we sussed it out somehow.
Yeah.
We figured it out.
This is pre-internet. You couldn't Google it.
Well,
Man.
exactly. Plus, and again, I mean, it's not like, we're just a couple of kids having fun and goofing around, so
Sure.
it's almost like part of the fun is like experimenting with it. It's like, okay, what does this do? What does this knob do? How do you tune this string? Where do you put your fingers, frets or between the frets? Like, I don't know. But
so you're listening to Yes and Rush. So you're into like pretty progressive music. Was that being played around the house?
No. I'm an only child, so I didn't have any influences coming from any siblings or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, around the house, it was just like FM radio.
Okay.
We listened. We the family. Well, me and mom and dad would sit down. We'd listen to like American Top 40. On Sunday, Casey Kasem.
Okay.
And I loved that stuff. I loved radio. That was
Sure.
But anyway, I did have friends that had older brothers, and I had a friend of mine that his brother had like a hi-fi stereo system, and he was the guy that I remember going over to like my friend's house. We went to his brother's room, and his brother played Yes songs, and I was like looking at the album cover, the Roger Dean artwork and stuff, and he's going, yeah, so look, like the planet blows up and then all these pieces fly through space. I'm like, wow, this is cool. And just, the music was like stuff I'd never heard. I'm like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And same thing with Rush. He, it must have been, I think 2112 had just come out, and, he put that on, and I couldn't believe that, three guys were making that racket. I'm like, this is unbelievable. So at that point, like sixth grade, I guess, I was like Rush and Yes, and that was about all that I listened to. I mean, it was so funny. I mean, I was kind of a very ignorant musical snob because, I mean, I didn't know anything. But like,
Sure.
Van Halen comes out in '78, and I'm like, that's dumb.
Yeah.
They can't play right, and they're like, they sound like just boneheads. So it was.
I was in a similar boat, but with Nirvana. Like I was a music snob for no reason, but I got in and I'm like, well, I want to be great, so I must have to play jazz to be great. So in high school, like sophomore, junior, like I'm listening to Coltrane all the time, and I have no idea what I'm listening to, but I think I should be into it. And
right.
And around that time, like grunge. Well, I mean, by the time I hit high school, grunge had already happened, but earlier than that. When I'd started playing, like grunge was kind of the thing, and I'm just like, these guys suck. This is dumb.
Right.
You're just completely dismissive for no reason. Now I think it's the best ever.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's so the first time that I heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit" on the radio, I was like, "That is the stupidest drum beat." I can play that drum beat. The do do jack do jack do jack do. I'm like, what? That's like the first drum. I'm like, that's dumb.
Yeah.
And now it's like the genius of those songs it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree.
I definitely became a fan. I mean, by the time the second album came out, I was like, loving it. And, thought it was awesome.
When you came out here to go to MI, was at this point did you come out for MI and was being a musician like that was the thing? Like you're gonna move to LA and go to the music school and be an LA musician?
Yeah, totally. At some point during high school, I got the idea that I wanted to be, a professional musician. So I went to college, but I kind of went to college because my parents wanted me to.
Sure.
And by the way, first of all, shout out to parents and my parents. And
yes. What are your folks' names?
Jack and Nancy.
Jack and Nancy. Right.
And
on. What up, Jack and Nancy?
Exactly. And they're still in Virginia, going strong, thankfully. But
sweet.
Dude, they, you hear people saying, well, how do you make it in the music business? Well, first off, you have like the best parents, who support you and, just let you do your thing and don't ask questions.
Right.
So I went to college, and at that point I'm like, I want to be a musician, but I'll go to college, and get a degree and everything, so I can fall back on that when I, crash and burn as a musician. But I had a blast. I'm so glad I went to college, and that's also where I met my friend Keith, who has now been playing guitar with Chicago for like 25 years, and so we were in a band in college, and right after college, Keith was the one that was like, so dude, let's move to LA and we can go to Musicians Institute. I'm like, okay, that sounds good to me. I'll tag along, and we actually, it would have been January of '88. We flew out to LA from Virginia, and it was at NAMM time. We went to NAMM, but we also went and auditioned, and I say that in quotes, at MI. Okay. And it was basically just okay. Can you take the instrument out of the gig bag? Okay, you can come here. That was It wasn't like they were
Right, you're showing off your skills. Like, look, I know how to tune it now too. Check me out,
dude. Exactly.
Like, I should just test out of this whole school.
Right,
like, I can tune the thing.
Totally, and you don't put your fingers on the frets. I know a lot of people.
Do you guys know about this? Hey, Jeff Berlin, let me show you a trick.
Exactly. So, so I came out for that, and that it was the idea was that we were gonna be musicians and stuff, because we had. We had a cover band, and we'd kind of been, that's how we had been making money in college and after college, the year after college. And we also had a sound system, and so we ran sound and stuff. So, but like complete idiots, we didn't know anybody in LA. I mean, we knew one guy, and we just, moved out thinking that, we were going to do something. And I, actually coming out at that point, I'd been playing for 10 years. I only played with a pick. I was so freaked out. I'm like, oh God, the MI faculty is gonna like give me so much shit about, not playing with my fingers. And I'm like, well, but it's just, Chris Squire was my guy. And I remember so when I first got the bass, I took some lessons from this guy who, just came over to the house and gave me some lessons. And I remember he showed up, and I was like, okay, I'm going to tell him I'm going to play with a pick. Don't teach me. And so, he shows up, and I'm like, I'm going to play with a pick. And he goes, that's fine. I'm a guitar player. I play bass with a pick too. And I'm like, oh, cool. So, so I only played with a pick, and I thought I thought that I was going to get, yelled out for that. But like all the instructors were like, oh, that's cool, man. I wish that I played, with a pick. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
That's cool. But at that point, I was like, you know what? I should, if I'm going to be a musician, a bass player, I should learn to play with my fingers, right? So I started playing with my fingers at that point, and I'm like, oh, this isn't, I don't know why I thought it was so hard,
Right.
For some reason, I just I was just like, no, that just looks too hard. And then it didn't take very long to, be okay, playing with the fingers.
So you finish MI. What kind of gigs are you doing around LA when you're now out of school?
Actually, at that point, it's so funny. So right before I graduated, this guy, Rodney Gordy, who was the nephew of Barry Gordy Jr. from Motown.
Okay.
He came by MI, and he was a publisher at the time, and he was doing like a songwriting critique. So like you gave him a cassette, and he listened to it on his cassette there, and gave critiques. So I had just recorded like 3 or 4 songs, I think, at the studio there at MI. Keith was on guitar and had drums and vocals and stuff like that. So anyway, so he's listening to my song, and long story short, he loved it, and he basically he signed me to a publishing deal.
Sweet.
So coming out of MI, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be a songwriter instead of a bass player. Okay, that's cool. I love writing songs and stuff, and in college. The band that Keith and I were in, we released an album, and I, basically wrote or co-wrote all of it. And so it's like, cool. I love that. And so I got a temp job working at an A&S case company. I was a shipping and receiving clerk. I'm like, okay, this is only temporary until, I'm a famous, rich songwriter.
Sure.
But kind of long story short, again, after about 6 months of the publishing contract getting kicked back and forth, like it didn't happen. So now I'm like a shipping and receiving clerk with a Bachelor of Arts, in English, living in the middle of Hollywood with like nothing. And I'm like, this is a drag. And I didn't really have any gigs at that point. I mean, I might have been playing, there were a couple of like original groups that needed a bass player, and I'd rehearse a couple of times and maybe do 1 or 2 gigs or something like that, but nothing really. And that would have been like fall of '89. Basically there was nothing. But at that point it's like, okay, well, time to start networking and stuff like that.
Yeah. So you're still in it. You're still down for the cause of being a musician in LA.
Yeah,
you're not
totally.
Thinking of retreating and using the degree.
No, not at all. And although I do remember telling myself, okay, I'm gonna give myself a year, and okay. I don't know if I would stayed with that or not. But a few months later, MI put out, like, they had some kind of service where they would place musicians, or they would at least inform you of rehearsals, like artists looking for musicians and stuff like that. Yeah. And there were 2 auditions. One was for Michael Damian, if you remember him.
I don't.
He was a soap opera guy.
Okay.
And he had one like a giant hit. What was Rock On? Is that the name of it? You'd recognize the song. Anyway,
okay.
So he was auditioning. I auditioned for him, and there was this other kid named Tommy Page, who was basically, he was kind of like a teen idol type, and he had just had a #1 hit and was going to be going out on the road with New Kids on the Block. And so I ended up getting the gig with Tommy Page. And I remember, oh God, it was awesome. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be on tour now. And, I was making like $800 a week or something like that. I mean, like, I'm like, this is insane. But also, it was opening for New Kids on the Block. So we were playing stadiums all across the country and stuff like that.
Sure.
And, even though it was teeny bopper stuff, it was like, I took it seriously and I had fun, and great musicians in the band. Holy cow. That's where I met Matt Logg. He was the drummer. And he and I have been like kind of like a rhythm section ever since. This guy, cool. Hans Zermeulen on keys, which is he's.
I know Hans.
Yeah. So I met Hans, dude. So and Hans, you talk about a funny guy. Holy cow, we had so much fun on the road. He was hilarious. The guitar player was this guy named Pat Tommy, who was, again, I mean, everybody basically in that band. I don't include myself, but was just so overqualified for that gig, you know.
Sure.
But it was fun, and so I was like, oh, I guess I've made it. And 6 months after that tour, it's like I'm back to like not having any money and no work or anything like that. But now I know some people, Now I know Matt, and I knew Hans, and Pat, and I knew the musical director, and I had that musical director. At the same time, we were rehearsing at this place called Leeds that I don't think is around anymore. And our musical director was also a musical director for Wilson Phillips, who was rehearsing They were rehearsing next door, and he would kind of go back. The MD would go back and forth, between the acts, doing that. And so I met, Wilson Phillips' band, and the bass player was this guy Mark Brown, and Basil Fung was the guitar player. Steve Klong was the drummer, and so I just, even though 6 months later. I'm like, okay, great. I have no money, and I'm working at Radio Shack now to make some money.
Yeah.
But I know some guys, and now I'm taking any gig that I can. I mean, I remember there was a blues gig, a blues trio down in Costa Mesa. I was living in North Hollywood, so it's like an hour and a half drive just to rehearse for free. 3 or 4 rehearsals, for free for like one gig that I make $25 at.
Right.
So, but, it was fun, and it was, I mean, I felt like I had to do it. And, you're learning stuff and playing and whatever, kind of keeping the dream alive.
Yeah. Right. So then what happens during this 6-month period? You're off the road, you're meeting people, you're going down to Costa Mesa, you're doing the thing. You're still around, you're still, what am I trying to say? You're still pursuing it. You're still being proactive.
Yeah, and and starting to put out the word to people I know that I'd like to do sessions and stuff like that. So you start doing demos for people, or you get on a jingle, and you meet more people, and at some point, I was also around that time. That was like when everybody was trying to get like a deal, like that was still a thing,
Right.
So I would, at any time, I'd probably be in 2 or 3 projects that were trying to get a deal. Usually kind of the same musicians in some of them, or whatever. So I was always in a rehearsal space, or doing a showcase or whatever. And so like the drummer that I met through the Wilson Phillips band, he got me on this session for this artist that was, looking to get a deal, and the producer was the producer for Culture Club, and we recorded at A&M, and again, lots of great musicians on it, and it's like, oh, cool, this is like an actual recording sessions, and I met a guy there, Mike Ajitsi, who I've been composing for now for like 15 years, but also, I mean, I've been doing sessions for Michael for 30 plus years now. So that stuff just starts kind of building, and then like one day I'm at rehearsal with one of these projects, and I get a message, a voice message from Glenn Ballard. He's got this new artist, and he needs a bass player because Mark Brown, who he had hired for it, like couldn't do it. And Mark Brown, who was in the Wilson Phillips band, and I met him then. Actually, I think it was, I think Mark Brown knew Rob Ladd, a drummer, and it was Rob Ladd who I'd also kind of met through all these. It gets a little convoluted, but I think it was Rob Ladd who I'd kind of met around the same time on another project. He was
You guys are all just in the same scene together.
Yeah,
like
totally, exactly,
all,
exactly. So Mark was supposed to do these demos with this artist, but Mark couldn't do it. So Rob remembered me and recommended me, and that was the Atlantis thing. So
nice.
So I mean, Atlantis wasn't even signed yet, and so we just went in and did demoed like 20 songs or whatever, and then like like 4 or 5. Well, actually, and during that session, at some point during that session, I remember the engineer was also working on the Simple Minds record at that point. And I just, because it's who I am, I just joked. I'm like, yeah, you know what? If you need a bass player, just give me a call. And I ended up on the Simple Minds record, just because I was like, hey, and totally, whatever. Just kind of joking. But I was like, okay, that's cool. Got to work with those guys and meet them, and that was a blast. But, so we did the Atlantis demos, and then a few months later, Glenn calls, and he's like, hey, she just got signed to Maverick, and there's some new songs, and, we want you to play on them. And he sent over a cassette, and the first song on there, the first new song was You Ought to Know, and then it was like, and then Hand in My Pocket, and You Learn, and I was like, holy cow. Like, these guys have been busy writing some killer stuff.
Now that is, I kind of want to talk about this record because this record was iconic. Like that, the Jagged Little Pill is like, I mean, that had to have been one of the hugest records of the decade.
Yeah, probably.
Like I haven't looked up actually, I haven't looked that up. But
it was like 300,000 million. But
yeah,
you can look it up later.
That's pretty strong. Yeah. That's pretty strong.
Yeah.
So walk us through what it was like being in the sessions.
Well,
and where was it recorded? I know we talked about this a little bit the other day, but where was that studio? And what was the atmosphere in there? Like, how much freedom did you get? Did you get micromanaged or
Sure. Well, it was done, I guess it was Universal Publishing or whatever they were called at the time. They had a studio over in Universal City, down in the basement of this building over there. So that's where we tracked most of it. And it was like, it was no pressure at the time. I mean, Glenn was successful. He had, he was coming off the Wilson Phillips album, and co-written or, did Man in the Mirror and stuff like that. So, he was a big deal. So it's kind of like, ooh, this is Glenn Ballard. But, Alanis this was, I think, her third album, but, really kind of, she was looking to do something different than what she had been doing. And
was this her first record in the States? Because I know she did some things up in Canada, and I know a drummer who had worked with her back in Canada.
Yeah.
But was this the first one that she recorded in the States?
Yeah, I think so. I think before, up until that point, it'd been kind of like more dance-oriented, and also, like it was very producer-driven, like kind of just telling her what to do, and that whole thing. And she was so impressive. Even when I first met her, she was doing her own thing, and it was, it's the first set of tunes we did. Ironic was one of them, and Perfect was another one. So, even that first batch of songs was like, hey, there's some great stuff here,
Yeah.
And this is the real deal. And Glenn was cool. If I remember right, I don't know if I got like anything in advance for that. Maybe I did. I think I just showed up and there were charts,
Okay.
But I mean, for the most part, Glenn kind of let us do what we were going to do.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy and very easygoing, and there was zero pressure. It wasn't like we were doing the follow up to Jagged Little Pill, or where all eyes would be on you. It was just kind of like, hey,
right.
And I knew most of the a lot of the guys that were playing in the band. So it was it was a very comfortable situation, and to be honest with you, I loved it so much because it's like, especially when we went back, she had been signed, and so now we're doing the new batch of songs, but it's for an actual album that's going to be released. It's no longer just demos that might get out there. And at that point, Rob Ladd had been on the first set of the drummer had been on the first set of songs, and he couldn't do the second set, so I got my friend Matt Logg to play on it.
Okay.
So I've got my good friend there, and I just remember telling him one time, I just looked over at him, I'm like, dude, I am so happy right now, just because I'm making money being a studio musician and playing what was obviously killer stuff. Who knows if
but it wasn't that yet. Like, it wasn't.
No, exactly.
Like, it's still just this kind of like everybody is believing in it. But question real quick, when knowing that this record, now that she's signed, and then so like there's a different dynamic from just cutting demos with her, was there a different sense of urgency or pressure?
No,
in the
not at all.
session?
No,
Okay.
no, not at all. Again, like, so I get these demos of You Ought to Know and Head Over Feet and stuff like that, and the demo vocals were what ended up on the record.
Wow.
They weren't being precious with it at all.
Okay.
And it was just have fun, be creative. And I actually have a handful of songs from those sessions that didn't make the record, and they're great too. And I'm kind of bummed that a few of them didn't make it, but I mean, obviously,
Yeah, I mean, what do you like?
Exactly.
It's like all right
sold,
with what they picked.
I mean, they could have sold 35 million instead of 36 million or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. But no, it was fun. It was great, and I totally enjoyed it. But yeah, even at that point, it's kind of like, but you never know if it's going to hit,
Sure.
Because how many artists come out and put records out that you think are great, but nothing happens to them. But yeah,
right,
that one came out.
During that time, like they were still taking chances on new artists, and like an artist, the one I'm thinking about specifically while I talk about this is an artist named Natalie Imbruglia,
Sure.
who had a major hit and like,
Sure.
But they were still taking chances on artists, and like they didn't know necessarily. Where I don't think they take chances the same way these days.
No, not at all. And and back then too, like female artists, I mean, they were not, It wasn't like it is now. There was, like, being a female artist was, kind of being a unicorn. It's like, wow, it's a female artist. It's a,
Right. So why flee on the one track? I've always been curious about that.
Yeah, I don't really know. I actually have the version that I played on,
Okay.
but it's a totally different guitar pocket. Glenn had played guitar, and it's kind of like a scratchy funk part. So, I mean, same drums and vocal, but the guitar and I played a totally different bass part. So I don't know the whole story, about it. I just remember going in, I think, to Alanis' manager's office, and they played the album for me, and Alanis was like, "We got Flea and Dave Navarro to play on You Ought to Know." And I was like, "Oh man, that's one of the better songs." And I was bummed about it. So at first I was kind of like, I'm not happy, But dude, I mean, it's a much better version with those guys on it. It just had so much more attitude, and it's so much more loose and raw and stuff like that. So a total right call to do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that bass track is fantastic that they played. I didn't know that was Navarro, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder if that was just kind of a move to like get some people in. They're like, oh, these guys are recognizable, to help kind of endorse Atlantis as an artist or something. Right.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you.
What year was that record?
Let's see. We recorded it like summer and fall, basically winter of 94.
Okay.
And so I guess it came out like June of 95.
Okay. So then you start working for Henley in 2000.
Right.
So between 95 and 2000, what are you up to?
Oh man, those were the halcyon days. That was I was doing lots of sessions for lots of different artists, doing lots of jingles, lots of like radio packages and stuff like that, and worked on a Rod Stewart record, like his last rock record before he did the standards. And that was
early 2000s, right? I think when he came out with those, like
probably
02.
Because this would have been 97 and 98 that that we recorded the Rod stuff, and that was a blast because that was actually how I always imagined recording a record was, because the band was set up in a studio at at Oliver Lieber's house. This guy Oliver Lieber who's playing guitar, and we worked up the arrangements as a band, and then we cut a couple of versions, and it took a few months, and we took our time, but a lot of work and a lot of creativity and stuff like that, and yeah, that was a blast to do. I'm really happy with the way that record came out. That was fun. But
do you prefer that kind of really organic, creative melting pot approach to a session where you might just come in and like have a chart there, or get emailed a work tape with a bunch of scratches? Like, do you like working it out with the other musicians live?
I think so. I mean, you get to workshop and then try different things and see what works. I mean, I would do that normally anyway. Like if I am given something, like I told you, like I did a session yesterday, for this artist, and I get it, and I'm the first little bit. I'm kind of just throwing different ideas down, and I ended up actually sending 2 takes. One just kind of a standard sort of bass thing, and this other take that had all these double stops going crazy during like the verse, but which I thought fit really nice with the guitar and the vocal and everything like that. But it's like, okay, this might be too crazy, but I think it's cool.
Okay. So
yeah, I'm always, no matter, like going back to the Atlantis stuff, I know for the second batch of tunes that Glenn had sent the tunes we were going to record, and I definitely went through those, and I have all these work tapes of me at home, cassettes of me just trying out ideas on the songs and stuff like that. Just I'm kind of prepared and know what's going on. But yeah, getting back to the Rod thing, when there's a whole band of people kind of doing that at the same time, it's a great energy. It's a lot of fun.
Sure. Yeah, I'd agree. So you're doing a bunch of sessions, Rod. Who else were you cutting records for during this 5-year?
Yeah, I worked with Glenn Ballard a lot. The Corrs. He had a couple of movies that he was, writing songs for. So some soundtrack stuff. And Rick Springfield, John Waite. And actually, just before I got the Henley gig, I did a session for Henley. Actually, when I was, it was when I was auditioning for the band. It was 3 weeks of callbacks, and after one of the callbacks, so after one of the callbacks, we do the kind of the audition process again. At this point, we're just auditioning. Some of us keep coming back, but now it's just new guitar players. So we think we have the gig, but we don't know. We're not told. We're like, thank you. They're like, thank you, and we're like, okay, see ya. But so get called back, and at the end of the day, Don is like, hey, do you want to play bass on a track of mine? I'm like, yeah, sure. And so he's like, yeah, well, go over to whatever it was, Sunset Sound or whatever, and Stan Lynch, the drummer from the Heartbreakers, was producing that record at the time, Inside Job. He's like, Stan will be there, and then I'll be there a little later. And so I went, and Stan played me the track, and I put a couple of takes down, and Don was late, and so Stan was like, hey, you know what, go ahead and leave, and if Don doesn't like it, or if you want something changed, we'll just call you back. And so I left, but thankfully, Don liked it. So
sweet.
Yeah, so it stayed. So
now, is that how you ended up? Is that how you ended up with the road gig as well? Is because he gets there and realizes he can count on you, like you're playing on the tune in the studio, and then, I mean, you had already been rehearsing with him and kind of been vetted. Was that the anchor that really got you the road gig?
I don't know. I really don't. I'm actually kind of surprised in a way that I got the gig, because a lot of times, well, most times when you get a gig, it's because you know somebody, or a lot of people. And that gig, again, Rob Ladd, the guy that got me on the Atlantis record, heard about the auditions for Don and went down and auditioned, and Don was like, hey, do you know any other bass players? And He's like, yeah, Lance, call this guy Lance Morrison. Actually, that's a funny story. So before I, get called for the audition or even know that Don's auditioning a band, I'm at home, one, whatever it is, Thursday, and I get this phone call. And this guy goes, hey, can I speak to Lance? And I go, yeah, this is Lance. And he goes, hi, this is Don Henley. And my first thought is like, yeah, who is this that's, pulling my leg? And then at the same time, I'm like, this could be Don. So I don't want to just, be that guy that's like, screw you, and then hang up. So he goes, it's pretty quick. He goes, hey, hi, this is Don Henley. And I go, hey, Don, what's up? And he laughed,
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, oh, my God, this is Don Henley,
Yeah.
And my heart starts beating really fast and stuff like that. And so anyway, yeah, so the only person I knew in that camp was the drummer. And so I think part of it was like Don, liked the drummer. So the fact that Rob had recommended me was kind of a, thumbs up.
Yeah, enough of an endorsement. Yeah.
But also, I think part of it maybe had to do with my whole thing, especially once I got out of college and really started focusing on what I wanted to focus on and thought was important in bass was, I never practiced shredding or anything like that. I only practiced time and feel. And the way that I did that was I would learn a track note for note, mistakes and all. Yeah. And not only note for note, like the feel. I would be like, okay, this bass player is playing a little behind the drums in the second verse. I mean, I would learn it to that extent and then record myself playing along until I couldn't tell that I was playing, that, there was somebody playing along.
Right.
So, and some of the tunes that I shedded like that were like, the Pinot songs, New York Minute and Sunset Grill. And, even like Into the Innocence would be a song. Well, not Into the Innocence because I was like synth bass, but Last Worthless Evening in Bob Glob, who's a huge influence on me. I love his playing. But like just learning Bob's feel on that song. And, that was something that I had done 10 years before I auditioned. So I, like when I went in, it's like, I'm going to play this stuff note for note and exactly the feel that's on the record. I mean, to the best of my ability, which hopefully was fairly, close to what it was. So I think that helped too. And I enjoy that discipline,
I'm kind of glad you brought that up of masking the feel. And I think the other thing that I talk about when doing video lessons about some of these transcriptions I've done is learning how to generate that so that it's not bass karaoke.
Right.
That you really know how to generate that and go within yourself to feel time like they're feeling time.
100%.
Because that's the lesson. That's the lesson is being able to generate that when it's, just you and a click. Can you deliver this with that feel?
Yeah, totally. 100%. And, it took me a long time to figure that out. Because, I was cocky in high school because I could play La Via Strangiato. And, dude, I'm telling you, I played that song every day after school just to keep my chops up,
Yeah.
And I don't think I was playing it exactly note for note because I didn't have the ear for, like, a lot of that craziness. But, I was playing my version of it, which was probably 90% there. But I thought because I could play La Via Strangiato that I could play anything. And in college, in the cover bands I was in, we kind of did sort of this one band, the popular band that I finally got in college, did kind of like a Blues Brothers type thing, a lot of that soul music and, old
all
rock
the
and
Duck
roll.
Gun stuff.
Yeah, totally. And I'm playing it with a pick on a Rickenbacker. Like, so my girl is like, gung, 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 gung. And I think I am killing it,
Yeah.
I mean, I kid you not. So I don't know what those guys are thinking. But anyway, so, dude, it wasn't until I, got to L.A. that I kind of wised up. I mean, at that point, I had started to kind of like, learn stuff more note for note. And my ear was getting better. And I was kind of, playing along and trying to match stuff. But I was still only playing stuff with a pick. And I remember like I had this sort of like light bulb moment where I was trying to learn some Parliament Funkadelic, tear the roof off the sucker, you know, just I mean, how funky is that bass line? I'm like, yeah, I'm good enough to do this. And I remember like learning it and playing it back, and I'm like, okay, I know what the notes are, but I am nowhere near playing this, you know?
Right.
I'm like, this is wrong. So that's when I really got serious about, okay, well, if I'm going to sound, if I'm going to play this part, I have to have that feel. And the only way I know how to do that is to match it as close as possible, you know, and get it, like you said, and get that feel just by myself. And so I mean, I still that's all I do to this day is kind of practice that type of stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to shed feel like that, and learning how to get in and out of those spaces personally. You know, like on tracks where they're like maybe they're laying back on a verse and then it evens out on a chorus or something. I'm specifically thinking of a Sting bass line right now.
Oh,
you know, and like so getting in and out of where you're putting the time and making sure it's always really deliberate.
Sure.
And it's not just a Hail Mary of like, it kind of sounds close with the drums.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's also
it's so intentional.
Yeah, and also for me, I so want to lock in with a drummer. Like a drummer is like my safety blanket, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm always like just instinctively going with the drummer, and I think, you know, being able to learn grooves and feel by learning a song exactly with the feel and everything just gives you an idea of it just makes that much that easier to do.
Yeah.
And the other
I think that there's go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing as far as like like recording yourself, I think that's really an important thing, even when if you're playing to a metronome or something like that, or you're learning a part. Because I can't tell you how many times, like I would be practicing and playing something and thinking that I was nailing it, and then I go back and listen, and I go, oh my God, I'm always rushing that figure, always. Yeah. So now I have to record myself playing that figure, but feeling like I'm playing it way behind the beat, you know.
Sure.
And then you go back and listen. You're like, okay, no, now I'm on it. You know, that's what it feels like internally. To be, playing that and putting it where you want to, where you want to put it. A lot of times you think you're putting it where you want it and where it's supposed to be, but you're not. And the only way to know is to record and listen and be able to listen, critically and go, no, that sucks. I suck, but I can change that. I tell you what I do now, just because I would get so crazy about this stuff. If I had, hard disk recording, back in college, I used to record myself and listen back on cassette. I would record myself to a click now, and I'd look at the waveform.
Yeah.
I'd be that crazy.
Right.
And be like, no, you're 2 milliseconds off. What is wrong with you?
It's funny, though, because I feel like that can almost, like the pendulum can swing the other way.
Dude, totally.
You look at it in a way that's so digital, that's like, okay, yeah, maybe I am, but how does it feel? And still defaulting to how does it feel?
Right.
Even versus like a visual, like, okay, like, yeah, I'm consistently behind or I'm consistently right on the click. But like, okay, how does it feel? Like, where's your note release? Does that feel good?
Yeah, and
like all the other nuanced things.
Yep. And you definitely have to make sure that you have kind of the the correct like outlook on what the feel should be. Because I know I got into this rigid place, especially when I first moved out here. I was like, I have to be perfect because obviously every musician in LA is perfect, right on the grid. So I thought my job and a good feel and groove was to sound like you were a programmed keyboard with the velocity and note durations and everything. I mean, perfect. And I do remember doing like, a session for this independent artist, and I got the CD back, and, I put on some song and I'm listening, and I'm like, son of a bitch. I suck so bad that the producer replaced me with with a programmed synth. I mean, this is a synth, you know? And then I heard a lick that I had played. I'm like, oh, that's me. And I got excited that the track had zero feel, you know? That it was like, it was just locked to the grid. I mean, it was to a drum machine,
Right.
so, you know, whatever. But yeah, so, you know, I definitely went a little crazy as far as that goes.
I want to talk about, because we didn't the other day. What you're doing with Mike Campbell. Dirty Knobs.
Sure. Yeah, that's
how'd you get involved, and talk us through it.
So the Dirty Knobs had kind of been a thing for a few years, and then sadly, you know, Howie and at that point, I think the rhythm section was Steve Ferroni, and
Okay.
you know, he was the drummer, and why am I Ron Blair, sorry.
Okay.
You know, which was Tom Petty's old bass player. So it was Steve and Ron were the rhythm section, and then sadly Howie passed away, and Ron got back in the Heartbreakers. So at that point, you know, Mike didn't want the same rhythm section that was in the Heartbreakers in his side project, so he auditioned, you know, rhythm sections. And my good friend Matt Logg heard about the auditions, and we went in as a rhythm section and you know, got the gig. So that would have been like 2004. So yeah, I've been working with Mike, you know, since 2004 in the Dirty Knobs.
How many records have you guys done?
Well, just one. You know, while Tom was alive, you know, Mike kind of wanted to keep it on the down low. He didn't want to, you know, step on Tom's toes or, you know, cause any, you know, make any waves or anything like that. So we basically just did, you know, a bunch of low key local gigs and stuff like that, and did a lot of rehearsals and you know, like I said, a few gigs and stuff. But you know, it was always, I tell you, man, since moving to LA, it has been the closest thing to what it was like to be in high school and be in a band with your friends, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Because we just get together in a space, and you know, Mike throws out his songs, and we come up with our parts, and we play it, and we just jam and have fun.
Sweet.
And yeah, it's awesome. And you know, Mike is insanely creative and is such a great player. And I mean, I didn't realize he could burn as much as he can, you know, because like in all the Petty stuff, for the most part, you know, he plays the perfect part, you know, with the perfect tone, you know, all the time. You know, when he gets to stretch a little bit, it can be face melting.
Okay.
Which is cool.
Okay.
And a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And, you know.
So how would you describe the vibe of this? Like, so if someone had not heard the record yet, are they going to hear something that's Tom Petty-esque? Are they going to hear something that's kind of, you know, I mean, obviously it's still Mike Campbell. So
Totally.
That's a common denominator.
Yeah.
But is it still in the, you know, are we going to immediately think of Tom Petty, or is it like, yeah, that's the guy, but check this other thing out?
Yeah, it's so hard because it's so hard not to sound like the Heartbreakers because of Mike, you know?
Sure.
I mean, not just his guitar playing, but even his voice has that kind of like Tom Petty quality to it, you know?
Right.
So he sounds a little bit, I mean, obviously he doesn't sound like Tom, but you know, it definitely sounds like it's kind of from the same school. So it's gonna sound a little bit like Tom in that sense. On this album, which again is like our first album, the Reckless Abandon is the name of it. Mike really didn't want it to sound like the Heartbreakers, so it leans more towards like boogies and blues type stuff and jams than like full produced songs. Although there are a few, you know, more produced songs on there, you know. But yeah, I'd say it's like maybe a little more rocking Tom Petty, because Matt Logg is the drummer in that band too. Well, like I said, anyway.
Right.
And you know, he and I both definitely come from, you know, like a rock background. And so, I mean, there have been times where I'm like, am I the right bass player for, you know, this band? I mean, shouldn't I be like more of a guy that, you know, just has more of a grasp on like Americana instead of just, you know, dumb musclehead rock or pop and the stuff that I that I've tended to lean towards. But Matt and I have had that conversation, and we both like to agree and hope, fingers crossed, that it's nice to bring like a different, like kind of a rock edge to that sound. Not that the
Sure.
the Heartbreakers couldn't rock full on or anything like that. We're not. I mean, this is like splitting hairs. You have to be.
Right. I don't think of them like they didn't have a strong identity as a rock. I mean, like yes, yes, they could rock, but like that wasn't necessarily the identity.
Right.
I don't think, and it seems like it's a good look to have both you and the drums coming from this rock background to really, really kind of drive home that color in the music.
Yeah, and like for instance, there's a song called "Loaded Gun" on the album, and a lot of people say, "Oh man, that's cool. That sounds like AC/DC." So like,
sweet.
So you would never, and not that it does. I mean, maybe it sounds like a mash between AC/DC and the Heartbreakers, but you would never. I don't think anybody would ever, listen to I don't know. Maybe there's a Heartbreakers track that sounds like AC/DC. I don't know.
Yeah.
But maybe not. But yeah, so.
Yeah.
And the other nice thing about that band is that I really do feel like I kind of have ownership of the bass chair,
Sweet.
A lot of times, especially, doing the Henley gig or any gig with any established artist, like if I didn't play on the record, I'm trying as hard as I can to recreate the record, the part.
Right.
Unless, the arrangement has changed or whatever, and then I'll do something, obviously.
Yeah, it puts you into that hired gun space.
Yeah, right. And I believe me, I love, like I said, I love that discipline. I love learning a bass player's part and playing it and trying to be authentic to it. And it makes me feel like that 12-year-old kid back in Virginia, learning a song and playing along with I think I said, I do feel like I'm just playing along with the record when I'm on stage with Don, It's like I'm not really a part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoy that, and it's like, yeah, again, I feel like it takes me back to being a kid, and it's like, yeah, I'm pretending to be a rock star or whatever, or, pretending to play this on stage. So, but with the knobs, like that, I kind of have ownership of the bass part. So yeah, I like that part. And you know what? So I feel like when we do, when the knobs play live, like I don't have to play the part that's on the record. Like if I'm
you can still creatively look for some new corners,
right? And
in the tunes.
Not that totally, not like I'm going to go nuts or anything like that. But it's like, hey, yeah, I want to try it in this register tonight. Let's try this turnaround or whatever, and just have fun with it and be creative and try to be spontaneous.
Sure.
Yeah.
This you said something when we spoke, whatever day that was, Friday or Saturday.
Right.
But I liked the way you said it, and we were talking about. I think we were talking about just coming up and how we thought about ourselves and kind of the psychology of it all. But you used the phrase "a healthy outlook of your skill level."
Oh,
and that's a big one, I think, is people having a healthy outlook, which means, I think, believing in what you have and what you can deliver, and then don't thinking you're more than you are.
Totally.
Like having healthy goes both ways. So it's not just someone who's maybe insecure or thinks that they're less than, but like don't think you're the baddest dude ever, because you're not, and honestly nobody is.
Right.
Because it's all just music, and it's different people in different places will get your thing.
Right.
So talk to me about your journey with that idea, having a healthy outlook on your playing and your musicianship.
I still don't think I have a healthy outlook, but but it's not the I think I'm great, I mean, I remember, even as a kid or whatever, growing up, just being really aware of when somebody was way too cocky, and
Sure.
When they were just BSing, and it's like, dude, this guy's acting like a total ass because he's trying to hide, his lack of talent and all that kind of stuff. So I did not want to be that guy. At the same time, I'm a super perfectionist in a way, but that's because I think that's the only way that people are going to like me is if I'm perfect, you know? Like if I'm not perfect, then people are going to go.
Honestly, man, that sounds like some only child syndrome.
Could be. Yeah,
stuff.
Dude. No. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And I get that. Yeah. Dude, that's how I would, like, as a kid, that's how I operated. I was like, I'm not going to speak up for myself. You know, I'm not going to say, I'm just going to stand over here and be really nice and perfect. And then people will notice me and like me and then give me what I need. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
it's just, I was
I'm seen when I play by these rules.
Totally. Exactly.
I'm the middle child, so I'm the complete opposite. Like, I'm seen when I act out.
Oh.
when I get in trouble, that's when I'm finally noticed.
Wow. Yeah, no, dude, it's fascinating.
So I had to go down that, like, deep dive and even, like, try to uncover how that paralleled to my career and how that was coming out in my playing.
That's fascinating.
That's been a long, deep, you know, I've gone down that rabbit hole in my life.
But dude, that's a real thing, you know, and it's so so easy to overlook it and not be aware of it. So I mean, the first 10 years, 15 years maybe that I played, I mean, I was like constantly in my head, I suck, you suck, you can't do this. And like if I played a gig and, you know, somebody would come up and would go, hey man, you sounded great. I'd be like, no, I didn't, you know, which that was like one of the first things that I realized that there was something wrong was, you know, in my 20s probably, I was like, you know what? When someone comes up and says that they loved what you did or that I played well, and I said, no, I didn't. What I'm saying is, you're full of shit, dude. You know,
right?
I'm not being self-deprecating or quote unquote honest with him and myself. I'm just totally dismissing what this person.
It communicates as dismissive. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I'm like, so, I mean, I did learn at some point when somebody would come up and go, dude, you killed it tonight, to go, thank you, you know, and I'll keep my thoughts to myself.
Sure.
But yeah, so, I mean, up until this day, I swear to God, my whole operating, the way I operate is my inner voice is going, you suck, you can't do this. And then I prove to myself that I can do it, you know? So ultimately I do it, but I never learned the lesson that, you know, you don't need to just trust yourself and you'll get there, you know?
Sure. What do you feel like you're still searching for? So to use the analogy you used when you were a child, where you're just over there in the corner being perfect and getting noticed and recognized and probably praised, for that, you understood what could scratch the itch. You understood that doing that gave you that payoff, and you liked the payoff. Right. So in music, if you're still telling yourself you suck all the time, what is it that you're searching for that will give you the payoff? And do you feel like you're willing and like kind of emotionally open to receive the payoff of like, you know what, I crushed it?
So here's the thing. I think it's become such a habit, right?
Okay.
That it's hard to undo it. And dude, I do that in my normal life. I swear to God, if I'm walking through the kitchen and I bang my knee on the counter, I'm like, you suck, dude. You can't even walk.
You suck. You can't.
I'm telling you, I do that. I get it.
You just have to like pace back and forth, like get your walk chops together. Like
totally,
I gotta be able to do 5
let me try,
and not mess up.
All right,
and
let me
then
do this
I can
again.
own it.
Totally. All right, you can do this 10 times in a row. Walk past this counter until you know, if I drop my keys, I'm like, you can't even hold something in your hand. I mean, it's kind of I
got to practice it like shoulders forward, now shoulders back.
You know what? I've never thought of that. I never thought about practicing that stuff, but I think you're right. I need to start doing that.
Right. But that was shoes, socks, barefoot.
Oh, dude, it's so funny.
There's so many versions of this. This is, you know.
It's so funny, and I mean, I do, you know, understand how stupid I'm being at some point, but my initial reaction is to, you know, just berate myself for being human.
Sure.
But no, dude, one of the most profound things anybody's ever told me. And by the way, I've been to therapy about my whole childhood thing, and so I'm working it, and I'm trying to get better about that. But Victor Andrizzo, I don't know if you know him or not, great killer drummer, and
I don't know.
Killer. He's actually Atlantis' drummer right now, but he's done tons of sessions and stuff. Just great drummer and good guy. 2 or 3 years ago now, I don't know how long ago it was. We were at a studio doing something, and we were out back talking, and I kind of went into my usual, I suck, and actually I was like, I'm not as good as I want to be. I suck, and I said, but you know what? Like, that attitude has really served me because it's gotten me where I am today. It's made me, be disciplined. It's driven me, and so it's a good thing. And Victor said, dude, if you had a positive, if you gave yourself a positive message, you'd be in the same place. And I was like, I almost started crying because it's true. Like, if I told myself instead of you suck, you can't do this, like, dude, you're not where you want to be, but you're going to get there because you're good enough and you're going to figure this out, and just stay positive. I would have been the exact same player I am today.
Sure.
Without all of that negative stuff, Right.
Have you seen that kind of, you just spoke to it actually. So this negativity, for lack of a better, self-defeating kind of inner monologue, transmits to the rest of your life. Have you kind of dealt with it on that aspect too? Like if you drop the keys or you run into the cabinet, like, just kind of accepting. So, I think that there's a lot about validating the reality for exactly what it is. Like, okay, I just ran into the cupboard. That wasn't the best.
Right.
All right.
Right.
That happened. That doesn't mean I don't know how to walk. It means, like, all right, I shouldn't have just, stepped to the left. Or, like, I used to have this weird habit of always running into the doorway when I would enter my apartment. It was the weirdest kind of quirk. But it would happen all the time for months. Just kind of like, like kind of shoulder check the door frame.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, what is this? Why do I keep doing this? It became a habit, and like that was just part of entering the apartment at a certain point.
Right.
But it's like, all right, I know I'm doing it. You're not an idiot. Just kind of realign what you're doing. Like, take a micro step to the left and don't do it.
Right. It's hard. It's hard for me
to circle that all back. It's just for me validating the reality of like what it is doesn't mean you're the worst ever. I think if being that mindful of it automatically sets you above being the worst ever. The worst ever means you don't think about it at all, and you think it's the best.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know what? And kind of going back to like thinking that I suck on bass and everything like that. A couple of years ago, I started archiving all of my cassettes that I have. And that's where like I found me like shedding Alanis tunes and some of the old Alanis songs that didn't make the record. And then all of these projects and recordings that, never saw the light of day. But I started listening to it, and I'm like, holy shit, that's good, I was able to kind of, and I know back in the day, I was like, it's fine, but it's not this, it's not, it's not really as good as it can be. But, my friend Matt, I've told him, I was like, dude, I found this bass track that I did. It was pretty fucking good, man. It was really cool and clever, and it was really good. And he's like, who am I talking to? He's like, that's great. He's so I
noticed the little personal victory there.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. So I'm able to do that. I'm never going to think I'm great or anything. Well, whatever. I can't. I don't want to.
It's a funny line, and I've thought about this a lot, and maybe you can identify with it, which is like, I personally do want to remain humble as a character attribute of Ryan.
Yes.
But there's a difference, I think, between being accurate and being humble.
Yes.
Like, yeah, if a gig happened and if I kind of crapped the bed on it, like, yeah, that's on me. Like, I couldn't hang on that one, or whatever, bad headspace. I didn't do a great job. But if I crushed it, yeah, I crushed it.
Right.
I don't think I'm the best dude ever. Like, absolutely not. But for that material and that time and space, like, yeah. Yep, that's as good as I could have done.
Right.
And so I did a great job.
Right, totally.
Because it's personally the best I could have outfitted. Is it the best thing? No. Call Pino. That's the best thing.
Yes.
But you didn't, so you're stuck with me, and then that's the best thing I could deliver.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
And it's I don't think that's arrogant. I think it's, you can still be humble and not be arrogant. I think there's a line there that I like to pursue.
Right. For me, like, I do find that I'm able to appreciate my playing more than I used to. I'm not so critical. I let a lot of stuff go, and like on the Knobs record, Reckless Abandon, the title track, Reckless Abandon. I remember, like, when we got the copy of the record. I listened to that track over about 10 times, and I was so happy with the bass track. I'm like,
yeah.
Part of it was it didn't sound like me. There was, and what I mean by that is, like, especially back in the day when I felt like I needed to be perfect. Like, I can listen to it and I feel not necessarily stiff, but just a little inhibited. It's like well, especially since back then, a lot of times you were going to 2-inch, and you don't want to mess up because you don't want to have to punch in and stuff like that. It wasn't,
right.
But no, listening to Reckless Abandon, the bass track, I'm kind of like just kind of jamming. Not, I've got some shapes and turnarounds and licks and stuff that I use, but I change them up each time, and it's just it's a fun bass track, and yeah. I'm like, whoa, I can do that. That's nice.
Right.
Really, really enjoyed it. And wasn't hypercritical of the fact that, oh, that lick you rushed. As a matter of fact, I tell you what, like on the second or third playthrough, I'm like, man, this feels great. I bet the engineer fixed everything, and nudged it. That's why it feels so good. So I was like bumming about that maybe this. And then I heard some lick that was like, way rushed. And I was like, yeah, this is real. I love it. Good, nice rushed. That's rock and roll. Holy cow,
Dude, thanks so much for taking all the time.
Yeah,
no,
of course.
This was great.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
And we should talk, anytime. I enjoy chatting.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm down after, like, next weekend on. I open up schedule-wise. Like, I'm down to come up and just get some coffee and hang.
Dude,
check out the studio.
That'd be awesome. Absolutely.
See what's up.
Sure.
All right.
Cool.
All right. Cool, man.
All right, Ryan.
All right, that was my talk with Lance Morrison. I loved hearing the stories about Jagged Little Pill, and what those sessions were like, and how he got the gig with Don Henley. You can listen to the record, the Mike Campbell Dirty Knobs record. Check it out on Spotify. You can get there at basshed.com/podcast/Lance Morrison. I have a link up there where you can go check it out on Spotify. Definitely check that out. That's a great record. If you are enjoying the podcast, please hit subscribe to learn more about what I'm up to with the transcriptions and what I'm doing with the website. You can follow me at facebook.com/thebasshed. You can find me on Instagram at thebasshed and on Twitter at basshed. That's about all I got, folks. You should definitely check out the Dirty Knobs record. Definitely check out the Dirty Knobs record. That's about all I got. Now, finally, now that's all I got. I had to get that one last little plug in there. Now that's all I got. I will catch you on the next one in a minute.